Now, I told you yesterday that Catholic priests are receiving JobKeeper payments. This surprised me, and judging from your feedback on Facebook and elsewhere, it doesn't sit too well with many of you either. This came to light through some reporting by the ABC that focused on the Catholic Church. Well, we've since ascertained that Anglican clergy too are getting these payments. The applications are made parish by parish, so I've got no official numbers, although a spokesperson says 60% of all parishes in the Anglican Church would qualify. And when it comes to the Jewish faith, we've spoken to rabbis who are receiving the payments, but again, applications will be made by synagogues, from synagogue to synagogue, community to community. So, as we thought, it is more widespread than just the Catholic Church, with many churches and religions putting their hands out for help. And also, as I suspected yesterday, the reason this has not become a political issue is that it seems both Coalition and Labor MPs have lobbied for this. They've lobbied for JobKeeper payments to go to religious officials. With the churches not agreeing to speak about this, I thought it would be worthwhile to discuss the ethics with Dr. Simon Longstaff, who heads up the Ethics Centre. He joined me to share his thoughts earlier. Simon Longstaff, thanks for joining us again. What's your view on this, that clergy, Catholic clergy and other clergy around the country actually are qualifying and receiving JobKeeper funding from taxpayers?
Well, I think the central point, Chris, is that the Church has argued quite strongly, and it's very effective in its lobbying, that although priests would normally not be considered as employees, which was after all the intention behind JobKeeper, nonetheless a special exception should be made in this case so they become eligible. The thing that I find a little troubling about that is that the Church has previously defended itself and evaded liability, if you like, for example, in relation to the sexual abuse of children, in a case particularly of Ellis's, where they said, well, they're clearly not employees. And so I suppose for ordinary Australians, they're going to ask, well, are you only an employee as a priest when it suits the Church and not in normal circumstances? And that, I think, is somewhat problematic in terms of consistency, if nothing else.
Yeah, that's a specific point for the Catholic Church, and we have focused a lot on the Catholic Church. We know that there are at least 41 priests in the Diocese of Parramatta on JobKeeper, probably hundreds around the country. So with the Catholic Church, it's argued in the past that priests are not employees when it comes to culpability for sexual abuse complaints, but now for the sake of JobKeeper says they are employees.
That's it, that's precisely. And I'm not sure exactly of what other churches have done, but to the extent that you've had historical decisions which the Church has advocated that their priests are not employees and that various agents of their activities are not companies and therefore they can't be held liable for the conduct in which they engage, then people have maybe not liked it, but they've at least accepted that that argument was made with sincerity. But then when this comes along and they say, well, none of that was actually applicable and can you please treat us now as a special exception where they are employees, that I think just raises questions in the minds of people about what very powerful institutions are able to do when they set their mind to it.
Yeah, that's another paradox here, and it's one that I'm glad you drew to our attention. But what about more broadly? We know that Anglican clergy are getting JobKeeper. We don't know the exact numbers. We know that some Jewish rabbis are getting JobKeeper as well. What do we think more broadly about various religions, religious practitioners who normally rely on collections from their congregations, actually getting taxpayer support through this period?
Well, look, I'm sympathetic to any group of people who've made a contribution to society getting to the really extraordinarily wonderful point where we have now where this virus is under control, that they ought to be, considered if they really need the support, as many others do. I think, though, that you'd hope that they also would have been very strong advocates for others, for example, in the arts sector and communities and people like that who've missed out, or the universities. And so it's difficult really to form a settled view about who should or shouldn't be getting this assistance, because on the one hand, our politicians have said to every Australian, everyone living on the continent, your job is to be responsible, to do what's right for the sake of the community, that only some people have been preferred with assistance and not others. And I find it incredibly difficult to unravel who's been in and who's out.
Well, we know that the churches have actually actively lobbied to be included here. They've lobbied politicians. I know that Labor politicians as well as government MPs have lobbied the Treasurer and Treasury to include clergy here. That's why it's happened. That's why there's no controversy, no partisan controversy around this. But this is why I thought it would be interesting to talk to you as someone who specialises in ethics, because there are many people in the community who don't like this. They say the churches have assets, they have means, and they shouldn't be putting their hand out for taxpayers' money, especially when they don't pay tax themselves. Yet there's no political controversy around this because both major political parties are happy with it.
Yeah, I think the churches are remarkably powerful institutions in this society, and many people ride on the coattails of the two major Christian denominations, the Protestants and the Catholics. And I think we should be asking questions as to why their status changes depending on the lobbying efforts that they make. And that's right, unlike most people who receive JobKeeper, and they will pay tax on that. I mean, that will be part of their package if they're receiving it within that employment situation. Of course, the clergy won't. And of course, it's a completely different setting that's been put in place. And I think the larger question here, Chris, is that it goes to the issue of trust in the community, in the political class. They want people to be treated fairly, and by that they think there ought to be like cases treated in a like manner. And when they see that your position can be changed according to the power of the friends you have at court, then they look once again at the way in which politics is being managed and they say, is it being done for the good of all Australians? Is it done in a fair basis? Or is it, again, the old system in which those who know the right people get the right result from their point of view?
Much to ponder there, Simon. Thanks for helping us to think it through.